Hi, I'm Liam Dann, New Zealand Herald Business Editor at Large, and welcome to a new season of Money Talks. This is a podcast about money, but we're not going to tell you how to get rich, and we're not going to try and pick the next interest rate move. In this series, I'll be talking to interesting New Zealanders about how money has shaped their lives and what they've learned over the years. With me today, I have Mark Todd, co-founder and development manager with Ockham Residential, high-profile apartment builder and sponsors of the New Zealand Book Awards. Kia ora, Mark.
Kia ora, Liam. How are you?
Good. Welcome to Money Talks. One thing I was just resisting saying property developer there. I've read in places that you guys prefer, not necessarily to have that term around what you do, urban regeneration, that sort of thing. How would you describe what Ockham does?
Oh, we love Auckland and we want to make our built form as beautiful as its natural landscape. I like to describe us as builders. That's what we do, And I guess the high profile comes from having built some pretty sort of prominent and really from the outside nice looking buildings around town in the last, say, 10 years, maybe 12 years, is it? 15 actually.
15. Oh,
yeah, time flies.
My research.
No, we started in the GFC, which is actually 15 years ago.
Wow.
We founded in 2009, so the GFC led to the formation of Ockham. So
it's
a good marker. I never forget how old we are.
Yeah, interesting that you started in a sort of a downturn. I mean, just broadly before we get into some of the other Money Talks stuff, I mean, how are you seeing it out there at the moment in terms of the economic cycle?
Oh, it's still incredibly tough on the sales side of the business. The last 12 months we finished nearly 500 apartments across 5 projects. Been a huge effort the last 3 years through pandemic and recessionary environment and shortages of everything. But sales have been anemic now going into our 3rd year. And apartment developers feel it the hardest. No one wants to buy off the plans when the general view is house prices, are falling, and they have been falling for the last few years. I think they're at the bottom of the trough now, and I don't think they're going to fall any further, but it's still really tough out there. Yeah,
and is that, you think, the big macro stuff? I mean, interest rates obviously putting the squeeze on. I mean, we've got people coming into New Zealand, so you'd think that supply and demand will, suddenly we're going to have more need for places to live.
Well, I thought we weren't going to get into deep issues, but
sure.
I mean, my view is I think the last 35 years or so there's been a structural change. Incomes have decoupled from house values. Like literally people can no longer afford a house. No one's better off with the relative value of houses' incomes, but it's not just housing. The price to earnings ratios you pay for shares in the share market has gone up an incredible amount in the last 20 years. What you pay for utilities or a roading company or an airline or a port, everything's overvalued, and I think that's a structural macroeconomic sort of finance problem. Free money's made a lot of money for the people at the 0.1%, but it's had some pernicious, macro effects that we're the worst, nearly the worst for unaffordability here in New Zealand, and particularly Auckland, but we're not that far ahead of many other Western cities. It's a modern economic problem. It's not just a New Zealand problem. Every major city in Australia, our closest neighbours, is unaffordable.
Yeah. Hey, look, I'll come back to a little bit of that later on because we do have some questions more on the economy, but, let's go back a bit and get a bit of your backstory because, the first question I always ask on Money Talks is what are your first memories of money, having it in your hand or around family? Do you remember what you would have spent it on, that kind of thing?
Yeah, well, I'd get $5 every now and again. I was lucky enough, I basically grew up on an urban farm in Mount Wellington. My grandfather brought some land in Panmure in the 40s, and my father and my uncle ran a commercial growing business, some glass houses, right up till 1997, so we had 5 acres and there was always something to mow or some work to do.
So that's tomatoes, things like that?
Yeah, hothouse tomatoes and cucumbers primarily, and I'd get $5 for, mowing the glass houses back in the day, and I remember doing that when I was younger.
Cool. So when you got your $5, did you save it, or were you off to the dairy? Or?
Oh, generally, put some aside. I can remember putting quite a few 20 cents in those slots in the Space Invader machines. They were in vogue in the mid-80s. Yeah,
absolutely. And so you were growing up around, was it Mount Wellington area, Panmure, that kind of thing?
That's right, yeah. I was born 3rd generation in the same street, so I know the city well.
Wow, yeah. So, I mean, it sort of goes without saying that passion for Auckland comes from growing up here.
Yeah, I've grown to love the city. I was lucky enough to be introduced to the water, and my dad was a surfer. I love the West Coast. I've had a batch out there at Karikari for 25 years. And the older I get and the more I travel, every time I come back, this is a beautiful green city with a lovely topography and rolling mountains, and, our Mona are fantastic. The harbours are amazing. The Waitakere Ranges are a jewel. Like, it's an amazing place to live.
Yeah, yeah. Hey, when you were at school, did you have a passion? I know the answer to whether you thought you were going to end up doing this, but what was your passion when you were a kid?
Oh, sports probably.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough to be good academically at school, but I spent most of my childhood playing sport of one form or another. So
anything that could have led to being a rep somewhere.
Well, yeah, I was. I played. I was an Auckland representative in football when I was younger, in the under-12s, and then 3 years later I made the Auckland under-15 rugby team. So I was a pretty good sportsman.
Great.
I used to love sport.
Yeah. So you, I guess, if your family was sort of horticulturalists, I guess, was it a given that you would go off to university, or?
No, we kind of, Mum and Dad both left school in the fourth form, so. Yeah. Well, no, I think Mum did the fifth form twice. So, Mum probably wouldn't appreciate me saying that. Sorry, Mum. I love you very much. But no, so I was, we weren't steeped in with Mum and Dad.
Yeah.
Whereas not surprised as anything. I had a lovely middle class background, but just, they had different backgrounds to me academically. And I suppose I excelled in I think in schoolwork as well. So I just ended up at university. It seemed a natural progression. All my mates were going there. Although there's only, I think, 19 of us that made the seventh form at Penrose High.
Yeah, in those days it thinned out a lot, didn't it? People, people went off into all sorts of trades and all the rest early. I read that you studied maths at uni. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah.
So you got to be pretty smart. I got lost in sixth form.
Well, it's an acquired taste. I just hated practical things. I enrolled in a science degree and did maths, physics, computer science, chemistry in my first year, and then I dropped chemistry and physics and just focused on mathematics and sort of picked at as much philosophy as I could.
Yeah, that's right.
I just love abstract.
I was going to say, it's on one level, maths is sort of the hardest thing, and it seems like a career-driven thing, but maybe it can not be career-driven unless you take it into engineering or something. Did you have a sense of what you wanted to do when you left?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I studied because maths is a terribly misunderstood subject. It's not actually about numbers. Numbers is a very special case of mathematics. It's like visible light. It's a fraction of the spectrum of light. And it's so useful for making aeroplanes fly and making buildings stand up and doing accounting. But it actually underpins relationships between objects and ideas of groups. And you've got to. And all the interest happens on what's on the edge of a group. Is this thing red or is it not red? So you've really, mathematics is a way to understand essence and quality, and then the relationships among things. And numbers falls out as a special case. So it's. I wish it was more widely appreciated for what it is. Mathematics. It's not actually numbers. It's more about essence and quality and relationship.
Yeah, reading about it, reading books about it. I stumbled at the numbers, and memorising the formulas and that sort of stuff. But I love the stories about maths. It sounds like you're still quite passionate about it as a thing. You scratch the surface of any subject is fascinating. I think that's and the older I get, I try and retain a sense of wonder. It's the modern world with access to information everywhere. Everyone's sort of an expert in everything, but it's kind of the opposites happen, that no one actually takes the time to study deeply in any, no matter how narrow or kind of bland the field is, there's always something to learn. So I just try and keep a sense of wonder about any aspect of human activity. Sure, yeah. And so, look, you got through that. You get through university. What were your career options? What did you decide to do from there?
Well, when I look back, obviously this is with 32 years, 30 years in hindsight, I actually got a job as a meteorologist cadet straight out of university, which was a bit of an achievement. Normally only take postgraduate qualifications, but I managed to get in there as an undergraduate. So I was going to be a meteorologist, and I went to the South Island for the summer, and during that 3-month period, I came back and I never turned up to my meteorology cadetship. Yeah. And looking back, that was a key sort of sliding doors moment in my life.
So was that just a sense that you weren't ready to hit that sort of workforce, the daily grind kind of thing?
So this is all looking back now. At the time, it was kind of all intuitive, but I just never really felt like I believed what I was told. I was lucky enough to be at the top of the class and do really well and have lots of opportunities. But I didn't really, just for some reason I just stepped off that path. I've been on doing well at school, doing well at university, got a good job, and for some reason or other I decided to stop taking those steps.
Yeah.
And that led to 4 or 5, 6 years of labouring, painting houses, doing a lot of surfing with my brother.
Yeah, I love that you had bummed around for a bit on the official Ockham bio CV thing there. I guess, that is something that is often undervalued, and I've had interesting people advocate that, former Reserve Bank Governor Graham Wheeler sort of advocating the same thing, taking the time to sort of see the world and understand the world a bit more.
Yeah, I think it was... And I don't regret it at all. I didn't really see the world. I'm one of the few people of my era that hasn't done a significant OE. I had a good look around Australia for 4 or 5 months after I graduated, from all the way from East Coast to the West Coast. Did a fair bit of surfing over in Western Australia. But I don't regret it. Yeah, it took a while to get traction. It wasn't easy at times because I was meant to be doing this and doing that because I'd achieved all these other bars. So, in some aspects it was relatively hard, but I was still motivated. I managed to finish the second major over the next 3 or 4 years in philosophy because that was really that's always interested me. And eventually my brother came back from London. He's actually a builder, and we started doing painting and renovating. And
that's sort of the beginning of the journey.
And then in 1997 we did our first spec house.
Yeah. There's a good segue here probably to a regular Money Talks question I have, which is, what's the poorest you've ever been? I'm guessing sometime in those surfing, bumming around years.
Oh, you always had a few hundred, a few $1,000s. I mean, I was always basically living, week to week, month to month, but I never spent more than I earned. I never had any trouble with debt. I think I was 6 or 7 years into running Ockham, and I was going overseas travel, and my credit card limit was still $2,000 because I never bothered to adjust it. Yeah. And so it's probably
a good rule of thumb if you're getting to the property game.
I've never
spent cautious
more,
on debt.
Yeah. Well, I don't mind debt, once you're underway and doing things, but as a general rule, we try and, own your forward portfolio in cash because you need to be able to sit. That's the challenge at the present.
Yeah, absolutely. Take us a little bit then from how we get to Ockham. From you've bought a house and you've done it up, and you've obviously worked out how you could do that, but I mean, you could have done that a few more times, and you'd probably be all right with 3 or 4 properties and being a landlord. So, but it's sort of grown a bit more, so exponentially since there.
Yes, we did. We never really did, painting and renovations to flip houses, so to speak. We did literally contract work, painting and renovating for clients.
Yep.
Which become tiresome because, you're always on other people's time frames. You've got to worry about getting the job, pricing the job. Are you going to get paid working to someone else's time frame? So the big motivation to do our first spec house was not to have any customers, so to speak.
Right, yeah.
You're prepared to. And I was lucky enough, mother and father lent us, I think, $80,000 or in that order to buy a house. And my brother and I did, and we subdivided, shifted the front house, built 2 new houses at the back.
Yep.
And we ended up doing 60 or so townhouses between 1997 and the GFC in 2008. And we did the floor plans and elevations for every one of those. So I developed an interest in town planning, and then very quickly I realised, infill housing it's basically all geared around car turning circles, because you have to build 2 car parks for every house back in those days. And so every subdivision is, basically a big fence, long concrete driveway, turning circles into a double garage.
Yeah.
And not very interesting,
right.
And it's really wasteful of scarce urban land. So during the last 2 or 3 years, in fact, I was doing my first small apartment block in Onehunga, just with my father and my brother, which was 9 units in Onehunga in 2009, and was a non-complying consent, and we were trying to push the boundaries because we realised that how wasteful the old density controls were. They economically preclude smaller affordable units in high value locations. So I sort of followed on that. Any subject's interesting if you look into it. I realised it could be better, and I suppose that's if you can contribute, I always try to.
Yeah, and all of it, over the years since, I mean, there's been more of a recognition of that as we've realised we have to actually get more people fit more people into the city, I guess. So it's kind of gone that way a bit.
It has. So, yeah, and the GFC came, and I was lucky enough, my best mate who studied mathematics with that university, he had a great career with Macquarie Bank, and like a lot of wealthy people at the time, he had money pulled out of the equity market, sitting in a bank account earning zero. So
this is your co-founder,
Benjamin Preston.
Yeah.
And so we built the Ockham building by Eden Park. I felt I had the confidence that I'd just say to Benjamin, yes, I can build an apartment building, even though I'd never done one. And 3 of our first 4 apartment buildings ended up in the Auckland Urban Design Manual. Yeah. And that was our goal to, because we were growing, I particularly, it was increasingly frustrated. I could see poor quality, high density. That's what happened around Auckland from the mid-90s through to the GFC.
We had that terrible run with all the leaky building stuff and, I guess...
but more just urban ugliness and economic vandalism. And you see it right outside on Hobson Street and Nelson Street. Those big, large-scale projects of poor visual quality, they actually are a form of economic vandalism, and they preclude future high-value development of the neighbourhood. So I'm a big advocate of good design, and the bigger the project, the more important it is, because big projects do have off-site effects. It's not my land, I'll do what I want. I'm sorry, a big building does. It can, and we witness many streets in Auckland where that economic vandalism that echoes through for 60 years or so.
Yeah. Is it tough being, I mean, you've been reasonably outspoken over the years. Do you get yourself into trouble with this industry?
Well, I have ruffled a few feathers, and it's, I try and, I'm reasonably lucky that we're a private company, we're independent, and we don't report to a board or shareholders. So, and I think that's probably a strength of ours, being able to say what we want to say in public. Yeah. We do that, but mostly I do it not as a property developer to change the rules to make our business function better. I do it with my citizens hat on, just taking an objective look. I'm lucky I know a fair bit about building houses and urban regeneration, and it could be better. And
as an Aucklander wanting a better city.
And I was lucky enough to work closely with the two Pennies, Penny Pirrett and Penny Hulse, that did a great job of shepherding the unitary plan through, which got rid of density controls and car park standards, which, that's basically needs central government 6 or 7, 8 years later to pretty much do the same with the national policy statement on urban development. So those are really proud moments because we did the right thing. We got recognised for doing good buildings, and suddenly people wanted to speak to me and understand what we were doing. So I don't know. It was just doing the right thing led to open doors, and it's always enjoyable to walk through doors.
I'll say this so that you don't have to get in trouble and you can see what you think. But I mean, I think part of the good reputation of Ockham, and I'll say, there are some other good property developers out there too, but particularly in that period to the GFC, obviously, but there was a bit of a reputation for property development in Auckland for sort of the wide boy, cowboy industry thing, a boom and bust cycle, and the fact that you guys stand out from that a bit, it gives you a good reputation, but what do you make of all that? There's sort of it was seen as a high risk industry that it attracts people who are attracted to high risk.
Well, I think it's particularly in larger projects, high density projects, apartment projects in general. I think you'll find a lot of apartment developers, they come from a legal or finance background, because there's a lot of capital and leverage at stake in larger projects, and there's a different ethos at table, and it's a good. I'm of the firm belief that a good outcome in property development is geared around the intention of the technical word is the project control group. But basically, the developer's got to have an aspirational vision for the outcome, or it's just so irrelevant of whether an architect's involved or an architect's. Every good building in Auckland's been designed by an architect. Every bad building has as well. It's all about the intention and aspiration. So I think too often with large projects, it's all about maximising the number in the bottom right-hand corner of the spreadsheet. And 1,000 decisions are made over 3 or 4 years to protect that number. And the aggregate of those small decisions, you just get poor quality outcomes for buildings that are going to be around for 100 years. And that's actually a moral and ethical failing. Like, sure, you've got to be profitable. Don't get me wrong, we're hard-nosed. We don't do anything for free. But being profitable is only necessary. It's not sufficient to undertake a project. And I think the way to change why I ultimately speak a lot is as soon as the public understands what a good building looks like, that's what they'll expect, and that's the new norm. So
Right.
I think that's the biggest asset for our business, is to help educate people what good buildings look like, educate other private sector players that you can actually be financially viable and make great buildings. So that's something probably the proudest achievement. I had to jump through the same financial and regulatory hurdles and construction costs as every other developer, but I think it's fair to say our buildings, they stand out and they're all financially viable. So why can't everyone lift their game?
Yeah.
But the real game-changing moment will be when the public expects better buildings because they understand what they look like.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess that answers a question I often have, which is whether, money is the goal or is it a byproduct of success? I mean, you're talking about, obviously you've got to be profitable to keep going, but your goal is to build good housing. I mean, is that sort of how you look at it?
Oh, so yeah, I'm as astonished as anyone that Ockham grew to be as large as it is. We had close to 100 staff 18 months ago, and in the last 12 months we finished $440 million of apartments, all privately funded. It's, and all the mistakes we made were mine because I've never run a business, as big as Ockham, except what it was in the last quarter. So, and I've never done anything for growth or to be biggering. Yeah, it's we did the right thing, and we attracted opportunity, and we were trusted with equity, and it's a huge responsibility stewarding capital. It's probably actually that's more than debt. That's where I feel the real lie awake at night when we're at one point close to $100 million of private equity under management.
I suppose because
12 months ago,
the banks are sort of a non.
Yeah, but the real responsibility is for those investors that have trusted us, and that's an act of trust, and that's the pressure that I feel, and the real keep me away.
The tough end of the business.
Is everything going to be all right?
Yeah. I try to ask everyone if they, if you still imagine, or do you imagine winning lotto still? And if you do, how much do you imagine winning?
No, I never imagined winning lotto. Being a mathematician, it's not high on my list. But I occasionally buy.
You worked out the odds early.
Yeah, I might buy 3 or 4, probably not even that, but 2 or 3 tickets a year. I might come across my attention. There's 15 million offer. I might do it if I'm in a dairy, but yeah, I don't think about it at all.
Fair enough. And obviously, and this could go for any time, whether it was when you were bumming around or now. But what would you describe as the most indulgent purchase that you've ever made? Something you did just for yourself?
Oh, shit, there's probably a couple of ties for that. One thing I would say, it's actually when you get to, I find it quite motivating to spend a little bit of money on things that are unnecessary.
Yeah.
But probably the biggest one was 11 years ago, and we finished the Isaac, which was a big project at the time. I think it was the largest apartment building in Auckland under construction in 2010. When that was finished in 2012, I ordered a restored old Daimler car.
Oh, wow, cool.
It was very expensive, and it turned into a standing joke, though, because it took 8 years to finish. Right, and everyone that knew me, every time they saw me, they asked me how my car was coming.
Yeah. And do you know how to fix it up and tune it up and all that sort of stuff?
No, it's pretty flash. I wouldn't have a go at it. But that's probably my most extravagant thing I've done.
I suppose in the early days it might have been the old surfboard or two. But...
Yeah, I did actually make surfboards with my brother back in the day, because he was a boat builder originally, so he was pretty good with resins and fiberglass, and he was a bit of an artist in fairing and things.
Yeah,
so,
cool.
Yeah, I love building things.
Yep. Finishing up on I guess a couple of bigger issue type ones, but one of the ones I ask everyone really is if you were Prime Minister for the day, if we could make you Prime Minister for the day, is there a priority thing that you would tackle to try and maybe solve equality issues, or wealth disparity, or housing, or whatever? Is there a law that or something that you think would be a priority for you?
Oh, well, that's I just think a bit of honesty and leadership would be good. I feel strongly that we're in a period of political decay, and oddly the promise of the internet and technology that the mid-late 90s, there was promise, there was optimism, it was going to be egalitarian, there was going to be free flows of information, the public discourse was going to be wide and varied. And you fast forward to 2024 and the exact opposite of that happened, and you've got disinformation and half-truths and propaganda being spouted actually by politicians, ultimately. And I know that's a strong word, but I actually going to use it because I do think even our prime ministers of both stripes, or any stripe, and not just locally, internationally, you'll just see untruths, and
they become hyper defensive about saying the wrong thing. So the language becomes very,
everything's really geared around winning rather than honesty and truthful assessment of what's going on. And when it brings us back to that house thing, my fair assessment of that is that housing is just the canary in the coal mine, which you see something structurally has gone wrong over a period of decades in the economy, and it's gone really wrong, and no one wants to own up to it.
Yeah.
Probably if I was Prime Minister, I'd say, hey, let's focus on, we're going to double wages over the next 15 years, and we're going to aim to keep the cost of housing static.
Right.
And that's a better way to make houses, twice as affordable, is focus on incomes, because I think that's where the major issue is. Yes, there's rats and mice issues around cost, productivity and repeatability is the biggest issue. We just don't do things at scale repeatedly to drive costs down in this small country.
Yeah.
But I still think that the real issue is the focus needs to be a 15-year concerted effort on raising incomes and productivity. And yes, we'll do some work over here to make sure nothing exacerbates housing prices.
Yeah.
So I think there's some good rules coming in. Debt to income covers, there's various ways you can look at it, but anything that constrains house price growth I think is a good thing, because it will drive productivity.
Yeah.
But the real issue is wages, and that's as Prime Minister what I want to say. And that's the honest truth. Something's gone wrong here. It's all flowing up. Unfortunately, technology and political decay combined, and our new ways of communicating have led actually to all the while flying up to an extremely. You've got 7 companies that dominate the NASDAQ, the S&P 500, and you've got individuals of literally robber baron status of wealth that we haven't seen since the late 1800s.
Yeah.
And no one wants to pull that honestly, like, actually something's gone wrong, guy. Ring the alarm bell.
Yeah.
Why doesn't our Prime Minister say that?
Yeah. And when you look at sort of the property cycles that we get into, the boom and bust that goes on, do you think there's a way around that, or are there issues with, I guess the swings in interest rates and that kind of thing have been a big issue. They catch out some developers, but in terms of getting a steady flow of housing supply in this country, do you have any thoughts on what we need to do to sort of maintain steady growth without going through those cycles?
Yeah.
I figured you might.
And it might surprise some people, but, everyone's talking about public-private partnerships for roads.
Yep.
That's what we need for housing.
Right, yeah.
We need 10 public-private partnerships with the top 10 house builders in this country with long-term contracts.
Yep.
Like, housing is in the same category as health and education, in my view.
Yep.
And the private sector has been entrusted pretty much since 1987 to deliver housing, and it's got steadily worse over the last 35 years. So I think the private sector is at the heart of the solution, but it needs support. It's not an affordable asset class. And particularly there's no money in building affordable housing or public housing. So surprisingly, I do actually think a series of 50-50 public-private partnerships between the Crown and the private sector to do housing continuously, building through the cycles. I mean, that's the tragedy at the moment. Yeah. We've just finished 600-odd apartments that were associated with the Kiwi Build program. We're the largest Kiwi Build provider, Ockham and Marituahu. Mm-hmm. It's been it's a story of success, all best-in-class urban developments, multi-level in the most difficult arena there is. And the tap was turned off 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Everyone knew this was coming. And now's the exact time where I should have 600 more to build, but
that's right. So they can push
Crown
against
supports.
The cycle.
So I do think that's at the core of is treating it more of a public good, not a private sector widget that the market will bend. Because it is a story of supply and demand, but the dysfunction is not on the supply side. The dysfunction is the market doesn't know how to make any money supplying housing in the price band from 400 to 800,000.
Yeah,
the market can't do that. So yes, there's a market dysfunction, but it's not on the supply side. It's just that the market is incapable of delivering at the price point, that the bottom 60% of Kiwi families can afford.
Yeah, so it requires some serious partnerships. going on?
I think it's some investment and some trust as well. Again, it's that trust thing, like some honesty. Like, it's not a bad thing. We've just unfortunately wasted quite a few $1 billion with a Crown house building program that has been incredibly inefficient and quite unproductive with poor outputs. But still, it doesn't mean the state spending billions of dollars of housing is on the wrong thing. It's just how it was done was wrong. I think the state has got a huge role to play in New Zealand's housing story, and it's not. There's been stories around the internet. You can see the last month or two in the New York Times. There's cities around the world that a majority of the housing is public housing.
Yeah, I mean, do you see any cause for optimism? I mean, this cycle, the next 8 months or so are going to be tough, whatever, because until the interest rates start turning. But when you look at things like what you guys are doing in Point Chev, that kind of partnership, you see optimistic reason for optimism.
I think so, and also like, which continent do you want to live? Like, I sure as hell want to live in Australasia. Let's not split hairs whether Australia or New Zealand's better.
Yeah.
Do you want to live in North America, South America? Plenty of problems going on in the Middle East and Europe. There's a large-scale ground war. I mean, I think it's often forgotten. We still live in a wonderful country, and I think that's a really key message for a Prime Minister, is just a bit more optimism. Like, we do have a wonderful country with lots of goodwill, and even still between, our races and our colonial history, there's still lots of goodwill and social fabric there. Let's not destroy it, but with just negativity. Like, let's build on it's still a great place to live, Australasia, and New Zealand. So I think we've got our asset is that we are still a relatively moderate country politically. We're not doing anything radical. We've still got although it's deteriorated, we've still got a pretty good social fabric. So
it can be frustrating, can't it? It's almost like, watching our cricket team or something. It just feels like there's some tweaks needed to get it get it humming. And
it's a bit about leadership. There. Like, it's just thoughtful, energetic, leaders. I think that's what we need. And ironically, it's Wayne Brown who, you may have heard, I funded a bit of FSO Collins' campaign, so you never thought I would find myself saying this 18 months ago, but he is actually a thoughtful leader. He's challenging central issues that are holding New Zealand back in terms of, infrastructure.
Yeah, and he's an advocate for Auckland
and he's not afraid of saying the truth. Which, could be a bit more delicate, some of the way he phrases things, but you've got to hand it to him for opening up conversations and widening solution spaces.
Yeah. One final question on money, I guess. When you look at some of the social inequality out there, and I guess the question is, what is it you think makes the real difference between why some people end up getting rich, some people don't? Is there something that you could sort of put your finger on in terms of what drives that sort of success?
It's honestly, it's mostly luck. And that sounds trite, but it's who you're born to, your parents, your social situation. You just look at the mathematics, and it's that is the truth, and that is the driver of why we do need, a social security net. Like, we're not born into the same circumstance or opportunity. And yes, there's exceptions to every rule, but overall, the trends and metrics don't lie. If you're born poor, you are poor. If you're born Māori or Pacifica, you're not going to have a net worth anything like, or a life expectancy anything like, of someone that's born middle-class European. And so it's luck that drives wealth. I don't feel at all in any sense of entitlement. I'm very grateful to have, hopefully contributed. Yes, I've made, I am in the 1%, 0.1% probably in this country, and I'm very grateful for that, but I don't think it's special skills of mine that I've earned or honed, and it's luck. But the corollary of that trite statement is it does motivate why we should have a conception of the public good, why we should look after each other, why we should have public health systems and public education systems, and why we should always discuss, like, it's a long-term problem to change structural inequalities in society. So I hope that does answer the question. Sorry.
No, that's brilliant, Mark. And look, thanks for tackling that. And I think, that is right. Just the more people we can get engaged in that, the better.
You're not pretending the solutions are trite. The solutions are not trite. They're deep. And it's also, but to open that space up, you've got to acknowledge the truth of the situation, which it is really about, how did you perform in the lottery of birth?
Yeah. Start with the truth and then work out from there. Hey, that's great, Mark. This has been a really good chat.
All right,
I'll
thanks,
leave it
Liam.
there. Cheers.
I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Money Talks. If you want to get in touch, drop me a line at liam.dan@nzme.co.nz. And you can read more from me at nzherald.co.nz. Thanks to my producer, Ethan Sills, and sound engineer, Leanne McDonald. Follow Money Talks on iHeartRadio or wherever you get your podcasts, with new episodes available every Thursday.